Hey guys, we're hanging out in Southern California at the Excel Group North America headquarters, and we're checking out a new one called the IZIP E3 Vida, which I believe means life in Spanish. Living la vida loca. Thank you, Ricky Martin. So the interesting thing about this bike is it's a leisure, kind of like a cruiser bike. You can see the mid-rise, swept-back handlebars, padded grips, larger saddle, not especially soft, but larger. It's a little bit more active. Sometimes those big puffy saddles can kind of chafe your inner thigh. So this is not a bad thing, but it's just comfortable. You can step over the frame easily. You don't have to worry about swinging your leg way up and over. You'll notice that the saddle on this one is really, really high up, and that's because I have kind of a longer inseam. I'm about 5'9". I weigh 135 pounds. I'm an active rider, so this might not be my first choice of electric bike, but I totally see what they're going for here. I mean, in addition to those comfort touch points, we've also got an adjustable angle stem. Be careful with that. Make sure it's tight. You know, if you start to feel it getting loose, there are these teeth in here that can start to wear down a little bit. So you want to make sure that's tight. Otherwise, it can eventually, it won't tighten up anymore, and you might have to replace that. Stems aren't super expensive, but anyway, we've got a rigid aluminum alloy fork. Really no suspension on this bike. However, you do have the Super Moto-X tires from Schwalbe. These are 27.5 by 2.4, so 2.4, that's a little bit fatter. There's great air volume in here. It's rated from 30 to 55 PSI, so you could lower that pressure a little bit if you're a lighter weight rider like me, and then you end up with a bit of a comfort feel. And then these tires, being a little bit wider, 27.5 versus 26, they're gonna span cracks and go over little potholes and stuff a bit easier because it has a lower attack angle. So it's actually a pretty nice setup that way. And if you really want to, go for full comfort feel, you could swap out this seat post. This is 30.9 millimeter diameter with, a little suspension post like a Thud Buster, a Body Float, or even Zoom has these little kind of cheaper ones online that you can get. You can work with your shop to test something like that out. IZIP does sell through shops, and there are 3 frame sizes on this, so it's nice to kind of get your feel and touch the bike and go for a ride. This is the larger frame size here. I believe it's 52, 50 centimeters, and then 48. So there's not a huge spread. I think a lot of adjustment comes down to how you position the handlebars and how high the seat is. But it is nice to have several sizes and colors. So check this out. There's like the lime green with the blue accents, really pretty. And then there's this satin gray with lime green accents. I think the idea is like, this could be kind of a his model. That might be a hers model. Whatever. This one's cool because it stands out a little bit. If you're riding in, lower light conditions, it's nice to stay visible and, let people know you're there. A couple things I noticed is that this has provisions for adding a fender on the front here. You see that? And then right there, possibly even some sort of a rack if you wanted to. The rear also has provisions for adding a fender. Sometimes you can add racks to those, but again, I feel like this is more about cruising around than commuting, but it's nice to have those options. There are no bottle cage bosses. They probably did not put them on that down tube because you'd kick the bottle cage getting on. The battery is a little bit vulnerable that way, but it's tucked back pretty far, and the idea was to make a leisure bike that had low center weight distribution, because a lot of the other bikes have these like rear rack batteries, and it creates a lot of frame flex, and then the bike can tip, it can be rear heavy. Having a mid-drive, especially from Bosch, is really premium setup. It's going to be very efficient. This is like the most quiet of the Bosch mid-drive systems. It's also the least powerful. It's the Bosch Active Line. It offers up to 40 Newton meters of torque. The pedal RPM support on this is a little bit limited. It's 100 RPM, so rotations per minute, versus 120 on some of the more performance line motors. And what that means is, in order to go faster, you can't just pedal faster. The motor won't be able to support you at those higher RPMs. You have to manually shift gears. However, there are plenty of gears to choose from here. We've got a Shimano Alivio, trigger shifters up front, 9 speeds. I like that there's a 2-way trigger here, so you can push or pull, and then 3 clicks on the low gear lever. So that's nice. That's a nicer part. A lot of times in the old days, you had this huge like thumb shifter up here that just, it wasn't my favorite. This is a lot more performance. You are paying a little bit more for this bike. I think it's $2,749. But again, coming back here to the cassette, this is 11 to 36 tooth. So there's a lot of room here in terms of lower gears and climbing, and especially with a mid-motor, you've got a lot of climbing support, or the higher gears, and you're going to be able to hit and maintain that 20-mile-per-hour top speed. There's the Shimano Alivio derailleur. Pretty nice stuff. Again, a little bit of an upgrade, and then there's a 42-tooth chain ring right here with an alloy guard. So that's going to keep your pants or your dress from kind of touching the chain. And see how elevated that is? It's a lot higher than the chain itself. So this really is, it's not just a guide, it's also a guard. And then the inner wall, there's a little bit of a gap, so you could potentially drop the chain, but I don't see that happening if you're going over, you know, relatively smooth surfaces. Maybe if you go off on the grass and it's bouncing a lot, but I feel like this is great. It's a good setup. And again, the motor here being a lot smaller, lighter, more compact. I believe this is 6.3 pounds for that motor versus 8.8 pounds on some of the performance line. Also, this is a standard size chainring, so it rotates 1-to-1. Every time you pedal, it's one rotation versus the smaller proprietary Bosch sprockets that you'll see on the performance line, CX, Speed, and Performance. It's nice. If you're pedaling this bike with the motor turned off, it still works just fine. There's no drag, there's no reduction gear. And same thing if you want to go above 20 miles per hour, you just go for it. And there's really not that feeling of like dropped support. And while we're down here, I just want to point out, look at this nice gusset that's been welded here. That's extra reinforcement. So this is going to be a stiffer frame, a nice big bracket down here, a little bit of just extra heavy duty. They want this thing to stay rigid and stiff so you don't get that feeling of frame flex and speed wobble. And we'll check that out later when we're actually taking a test ride. So again, I just like how the motor kind of disappears there behind that chain ring. Got the big alloy bash guard. The pedals on this bike aren't my favorite. They're the cheaper cage style. They're actually steel, so Welgo R199. If you tip the bike accidentally or get these scratched up, they may rust eventually. But I like where their kickstand is mounted. You'll notice if we pedal the bike backwards like this, chain actually goes and everything. That's the 1-to-1 chain ring I was talking about. It's pretty cool. And then the kickstand stays out of the way. It's adjustable length. Gotta love that. Quick release on both wheels, so if you do need to do some maintenance, you can easily take that one off. That's 9.8 millimeter, just skewer. And then back here, we have a through axle. So it's tapered from 12 millimeters to 10 millimeters in the center. Kind of funky. You just unscrew it and it threads into the other side. Yeah, it just makes servicing the tires a lot easier, but you really shouldn't have to service these too much if you keep an eye on the pressure, because they have the Performance Line green guard. There's a little bit of a puncture protection rating going on here. Schwalbe makes really good tires. It'd be cool if these had reflective stripes on them. It'd also be cool if this bike had lights and a rack and fenders and all that, but again, the price point here is trying to be cheap, $27.49. And the weight on this bike, the overall weight, is 47 pounds, so it's not too bad, in part because it doesn't have all those extra accessories. We're working with a Bosch PowerPack 400, which is the lower capacity. This back's been around for a long time. It's plenty for a bike like this with a power sipping motor. Also, it's going to charge a little bit faster. However, I should say you don't get the 4 amp charger with this e-bike. You get the 2 amp compact charger from Bosch. It's a little bit lighter. It gets 1.3 pounds versus 1.7 pounds on the 4 amp. Slightly larger. This is actually the 4 amp, but they look very, very similar. That one's just a tiny bit smaller, so you can kind of imagine. Use your imagination, right? So I think we've gone over most of the touch points, the performance aspects of this bike. I want to call out that they've got this nice rubberized lever here for adjusting the seat post. It's a seat clamp lever. It's bigger. It's just going to be a lot easier, so you can drop that down if you want to. There we go. And this is what it would look like at the lowest position. So you can see the saddle height could be quite low, and you'd be able to maybe put your feet down and stabilize the bike. Even if you're not getting full leg extension, you're going to have that comfortable, safe feel that some people want. If you haven't been riding for a while, or maybe you're a bigger person and you want to be able to relax and put your feet down. Okay, so the next step is to maybe explore the display panel. But before I do that, I want to show you how this battery works. I've got the ABIS keys here. You may be able to get those key to like. I'm not sure. I didn't see a card with this because these are demo bikes. And I say key to like, that means if you got like a folding lock or something to take with you, sometimes you get matching keys. But again, I can't say for sure. Go ahead and unlock the battery, and it kind of springs back. But I think it's unlocked. There we go. Be careful with it. That's why there's that loop. You don't want to drop these. They're kind of expensive to replace. 5.5 pounds, so 36 volt, 11 amp hour battery. It's a PowerPack 400. This is the same interface as they use for the PowerPack 500. So you know, someday you could get a higher capacity battery or maybe a second 400 and you could take them with you and extend your ride, or swap them if you and your significant other or friend have a couple different types of e-bikes, but they both use the Bosch Power Pack. There are a lot of good options here. And the base of this, there's the plug. It's where it seats into the battery mount, and that plug is duplicated down here. So it's the same plug. You don't have to have a dongle or any special adapters. Go ahead and take the key out real quick. And then I'm gonna make sure this is seated. Right now it's not all the way in. It's a little bit vulnerable, it could get dropped. Now listen for the click. There we go. You really wanna make sure it's in there so you don't accidentally drop that and start riding and, you know, get damaged. Now in order to boot this bike up, it's just a power button on top of the display. This is the Purion, it's the smaller of the Bosch displays. It's got this nice light white background. Can't really turn that off, but again, it's not too distracting. And I can read that pretty well from far away. All you really see is the speed. Right now it's in miles per hour, but you could switch to kilometers per hour by holding minus and tapping power. There we go, and I'm gonna switch back. It's got speed, battery infographic. There's 4 dots, just like we had on the side of the battery down here. So you can see how full it is, whether it's on the bike or off. And actually, I pressed that and it turned the display off. So yeah, it's kind of got 2 power buttons, but you don't have to use the battery if you don't want to. And then there are these readouts in the middle. So right now it says off. That's assist level. So you press the plus or minus button, you go up to Eco, Tour, Sport, or Turbo. Turbo is the highest, it's gonna use energy the fastest. And if you're in any of those 4 levels of assist, you can press walk mode here and then hold the plus button. Oh boy. And the bike just takes off like that. And that's pretty handy. Like, imagine you get a flat tire, or maybe you see a friend and you're at the park and you're walking the bike through the grass. This is almost 50 pounds, 47. It's not a lot of fun to push. So having that walk mode at your disposal is pretty cool, and some companies disable it. I'm not sure why, so I'm glad that IZIP's got it enabled. Also, you might notice this little rubber tab over here. There's a micro USB port that is only for diagnostics and software updates and stuff. So unfortunately, you can't power your portable electronics on this. I wish you could. Bosch also has like an Intuvia, really big display that's removable, it swivels, has more menus, and it has a functioning micro USB. Some shops will upgrade that for you if you want, a couple $100. So back over to the display. If you hold the plus button, it activates lights. You can see a little light icon, but this bike doesn't have any lights wired in. That's another thing shops could help you with in some cases. And it could be nice because, those little rubberized lights that you add on, they can get lost or stolen easily. If you actually bolt lights on and you run off that battery pack, that's preferable in my opinion. Okay, so let's see. We'll hold the minus key now and we're gonna switch different menus. So right now we're in assist level. Now we're in trip distance. To clear trip distance, you hold minus and then plus for a couple seconds there. Reset. There we go, we cleared it. Hold minus again. Total distance, odometer. And then range. Range is so cool because it dynamically calculates how far the bike might be able to go based on the last mile of performance, including your weight, the terrain, everything. It's like kind of thinking the whole time. And the battery capacity. So right now, let's see, we're in turbo mode and it says 29 miles. But if I go all the way down to eco mode, 67 miles. So you can see you really extend the range on this by riding with less assist, but it barely helps you. I mean, it's super efficient motor. As I said, it only goes up to 40 Newton meters of torque compared with 63 or 75 Newton meters on some of the higher end mountain biking motors that Bosch has. So anyway, this motor controller is measuring rear wheel speed. See, there's like this little magnet. It's measuring pedal cadence and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. So if you push harder, you get more power, and it feels very fluid, and again, just super quiet. It's very just efficient and minimalist in design, and I like it quite a bit. It also has shift detection, so when you're changing gears, even though it's not straining it quite as much as some of the higher end motors, it's gonna still kind of listening for that pedal flow, and then if it notices a spike in pressure because you're shifting gears, it eases back, and it's designed to save your chain, your sprockets, your derailleur. That's something that very few of the other mid-drive motors offer. It's something that Bosch is well known for. Okay, we got the kickstand up. I'm gonna take it all the way up to turbo mode. So it's a little bit louder. I still don't think you're gonna hear it. Okay, here we go. and it's incredibly responsive. So as soon as I pedal, I can feel it helping me, and when I stop, it cuts out almost immediately. You'll notice that chainring isn't spinning much at all past when I stop pedaling. That's great. Just really gives you a sense of control and stability. Speaking of stability, with those larger tires, 2.4, oh boy, you can do the no hands thing pretty well. It tracks straight. I'm not getting a lot of frame flex here. Frame actually feels awesome for a step through. A lot of times these things flex and stuff, but I think that the battery positioning and the mid motor help a lot. Some of the other cruisers out there, they have hub motors in the rear and they have the rear rack battery, and you just end up with a bike that's kind of rear heavy, and that's a lot of, you know, pressure to put on the frame. It's sort of a crack the whip situation going on. I think they've done an excellent job. Hey guys, I decided to mix it up a little bit, put you on the gray frame for the ride test. Just listen for the motor. I'm going to be in the highest level of assist, so it'll be the most pronounced. Also watch that chainring starting and stopping. It's just super responsive. I'm also going to shift gears. You can listen for the shift detection. You'll still hear it crunching a little bit, which is just kind of normal when you're shifting. But I tend to also ease off a little bit if I know I'm shifting gears to reduce that wear. And again, 11 to 36, it's a pretty good range for a bike like this. 9 speeds. Ride's really nice. Just made it up to 20 miles per hour, but I did have to shift gears a little bit to engage the power because of that 100 RPM cutoff that I was talking about. And again, just the disc brakes here, having hydraulic disc brakes, 160 millimeter rotors, front and rear, not bad. And the levers adjustable, so you can bring them in a little bit if you have the smaller hands, you're wearing gloves, it's the winter time. There are a lot of great upgrades on this bike that justify that higher price point, in my opinion. Well guys, I think that is it. That's the IZIP E3 Vida. Raleigh has a very similar bike called the Venture IE. It's basically the same frame and everything, but some different colors, and it's got the Raleigh branding. Both of these companies are part of the Excel Group North America. They have a 2-year comprehensive warranty and a support center and everything, so that's kind of neat. For the full written review, including standover height, width, length, all the other details I've collected, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there together and ride safe.